Hello everyone, my name is Jen and welcome to the Book Refuge. Well, we are here way too soon. We have arrived at the season 7 mid-season finale episode, which was titled Turning Points. So, that means we're done for now, which is so sad. But I am happy that season 7 is getting another 8 episodes next year, and we still have an entire season 8 to look forward to, which is, still sad, but we're still probably going to be getting Outlander at least through the year 2025, I would assume. So I'm not I'm not ready for the panic yet. But yeah, what an episode. And I'm very interested to see what you guys think about where this one ended off. Cause yeah, I definitely have some thoughts on it. I made my guess in the it was 2 weeks ago now about where I thought it would be, and it wasn't quite there, but in a way, I also think they made a good decision to not end with the cliffhanger I thought that they would. Again, we'll go over it, where they kind of left this, they left season 6 off with quite a cliffhanger that, upset a lot of people. But it's also that thing of you want there to be urgency for the next thing to come. But I think they left it with a very hopeful upturn thing instead of the very dramatic ending that I thought it would be. I thought it was very powerful. But anyway, we're going to get to it. So just as I have for most of this season's episodes, I'm going to go through a recap of the episode. I have my notes right here, so I'll be looking down at those, but I'm going to go kind of a step-by-step through the episode, maybe giving a little bit of commentary about what I think. Then I'm going to rate the episode based on my enjoyment level as well as on book accuracy. And then we will go into a part of it where I'm going to compare it pretty much directly to the book. I write down the chapters and what they correspond with in An Echo in the Bone, as well as maybe talking forward ahead. So there are some spoilers that will be in that section. But without further ado, let's get into it. So we begin the turning points still in what appears to be September of 1777, and right after the cliffhanger last week where we saw Jamie laying on the field. And there is some people going through and scavenging from the bodies. And we see someone doing that to Jamie, finding his picture of William that he has, maybe going to take his knife. And Claire comes across this mother and son trying to scavenge his body. And they realize that Jamie is still alive, and so they're going to slit his throat. And Claire, of course, is not going to have any of that. She is not playing around. She threatens to kill the kid if they do anything to Jamie. And she's like, I'll do it. I will kill him. And the kid ends up getting in the way, and the woman just kind of spits and walks away. And Claire is able to get Jamie rolled over, see that he's alive, help him stand up. She's very pissed at him. He was supposed to stay at a distance. That's why he was in the rifleman's brigade. He's not supposed to be getting in hand-to-hand combat. And she's like, you always got to try to be a bloody hero. And she's really going off on him. It's one of the things that Claire has done, ever since the beginning of this. When she gets scared, when she gets worked up, she gets angry, and she just spews out all this really angry words at him. And he has, they're limping off the field, and he says, you have the tongue of a shrew, but you're a bonny wee swordsman. And then we have our intro credits. Then when we come back, we have stayed with Jamie and Claire here. We're cleaning his hand, discussing, we don't know if William had fought. The British say that they won this one because the Americans had kind of retreated a ways, but it's still up in the air. And that's because, based on history, this is the Battle of Saratoga, which wasn't just one battle. It was a few skirmishes, and stayed for over, for almost a whole month, was the Battle of Saratoga, which I believe I mentioned kind of in the last video that this was like the first Battle of Saratoga, and then there's a second one that will happen later, which we'll obviously get to. But anyway, so she's cleaning his hand. Then we have a moment with Denny and Claire, and Denny is really struggling. He had said that he'd hardly lost anyone on his table, and in one day he has lost 10 times the amount of people he's ever lost before. And he said, my losses have increased tenfold. And Claire tells him, but the people you've saved have increased by that amount too, and you make a difference being here. So just kind of a moment is like Denny, he's full of great ideas. Denzel is a wonderful character. Yes, he's a little naive. Yes, he's very, hopeful. That is part of his religion. That's part of his belief, is that, he is a pacifist, but he also believes in the cause of liberty. So it's this, it's this conflicting beliefs that he's in the middle of, and he's really coming face to face with that. So, it's going to be a struggle for him in some ways, right? All right, so now we get to the part where Claire is doing surgery on his hand, and she's determined to leave him with a working hand. Now, if you don't know, this is just a reminder. So it's his left hand that was hurt. Jamie's left hand has been through a lot, okay? That's the hand that was stabbed by Blackjack Randall. It's also his writing hand, like he's left-handed, and so it's hard for him to write with his right. His left hand is what he is. He is ambidextrous, but his left hand has just been through some stuff. And so Claire's determined to leave him with a working hand, and so she makes him take some laudanum, because she's like, you're going to take this and you're going to let me do proper surgery on it, not with you flinching and grunting around. She's like, I'm determined that your hand is still going to work. And so she still, she shares with him that she was stopped and talked to by someone who said that Jamie is the one who broke the line of the British, and they were marching towards them, and if Jamie and some of Daniel Morgan's men hadn't have charged and broken it, this man's company was going to be, taken out by the British. Like, there was way more of them they were going to take out, but because they charged them like the crazy Scots that some of them are, they were able to break this up, and it was able for some of them to live. So there's this really beautiful exchange where Jamie talks about the story of Lot in the Bible. I love that they kept this in about how, Lot was bargaining with God that, would you save the city if there was 50 good men, or 100 good men, 50 good men, 30, 20, 10. He works them all the way down. And, when God, like, Lot is basically the only good man in this. Anyway, that's the Bible part of it. But Jamie says to her, he's like, 10 good men are worth my finger. And she's like, you bloody man, I knew you were going to make me cry about this. But anyway, so she does the surgery once he passes out, and it goes well, which we will see back in a moment. So now we skip to 1980, and we see one of only two scenes that we're going to get with Roger and, where did I write this? With Roger and Bree. Where did I put the other one? There it is. Okay. And this is him getting back and telling her that he found it, and him saying that, she's like, he's after the gold. He had went through the letters, and one of them that is missing is one, of course, about Jamie talking about the gold and knowing that Jem knows where it is, which of course Roger is very upset about. It's still kind of unknown, like, how Rob would really think that this was real. But I'm sure from his point of view, whether or not he actually believes these letters are being written directly to Roger and Bree, which, I mean, we'll find out later on how that is. But they at least are very historical, and, but to assume that Jem would still know, what does Rob know? Like, that's the thing. What does Rob know that he would think that these letters from 200 years ago do directly correlate to this Jem and Roger and Bree? Like, how? It's very interesting. But anyway, so Roger has to go, and it's William Buckley McKenzie. Yeah, well, he's willing to go with, And he's like, this is for your kin. We'll go back to my time. Let's do it. Bree has some gems that she'd gotten from an antique store saved because she, you know, was like, in case we ever have to go. Which, I mean, to be fair, if I was a traveler in this, I would make sure to always have some gems ready to go. Especially because they're in the modern time and it's like a little bit easier to get them. Like, yeah, it still costs money. It still is that. But it's also not impossible to get some form of a diamond or something like that and always have it on hand. Like, I would just always do that. So that's what we see. So, all right, then we go back to 1777, and it's 2 weeks later, and Jamie's hand is looking better. They don't say, like, exactly what date this is, although if we were going after it being the, like, I think the 15th of September was the first, it's probably near the end of September. But we're just kind of showing how things are going there. Claire is doing a little bit of discussing with him about the fact that there needs to be, she's like, I know there's going to be another battle. Because again, that's the thing. Claire doesn't know all the details of the American Revolution, right? She grew up in, well, she didn't even grow up in like the normal school system. Like, she was traveling with her uncle a lot. So she doesn't know the date of all the battles. Like, let's be real. As an American, I don't know the dates of all of these battles. Like, I hardly remember the intro and outro of it, right? Like, they're not dates that we retain. Like, Brianna's the one who studied American history, and we don't have her with us, so we don't know all of these dates, right? But Claire's saying, like, there has to be another battle that draws the French into the war. So once the Americans will have, you know, a fight that it maybe looks like they can win, that will draw the French into the war, which is a big, quote unquote, turning point for the revolution to have them come in. So now we have some cute stuff with Rachel and Ian, which I have been very excited for. Okay, I was a bit nervous about how I would feel about John Bell being Ian and how I would feel about him in a romantic light. This is something I've mentioned in series past, right? Particularly, I think, last season when we learn more about his wife and child and what went down. Maybe that was in season 5 even. Whatever. Don't correct me on that. I don't care. The point was, when we find it out in the show and we see him with Emily, I don't know how I felt about it, right? Because you still see him as pretty young. Even though, even in the context of this story, like, he's in his 20s at this point for sure. And he is a very strapping, handsome man. I mean, he still has Fraser and Murray blood in him. He's a tall, good-looking man, right? But I think this scene was really good from my point of view. I know some of you, anyone who's not Jamie and Claire, a lot of you in my comments will be like, oh, it was too much. I thought that it was good. It isn't all of a sudden like, oh, I'm ready to see these two get it on. But their awkward beginnings of love, I really liked. Do I feel like we've seen quite enough of those scenes to lead to this? I don't know. However, in the book, we don't see a ton of those either, because we don't get a lot of Rachel and Ian's point of view, although we do start to get them, which we'll get to when I talk to the book parts of this. But Ian is bringing some goose grease to Rachel, which is supposed to be for a man's rectum, for his issues going to the bathroom, as it were. And so Ian and Rachel are talking back and forth, and Ian ends up kissing her, and then she slaps him. But then it's mostly just because she's kind of overwhelmed, not because she doesn't like him. And so they have this beautiful moment. They're touching hands, they're getting closer, and he's like, you know, it's actually maybe better that you don't, it's actually maybe better that you don't love me, because it would be dangerous. So this is something that gets brought up, that it would be dangerous for him to love her. And at the beginning of the episode, if you did watch the, you know, flashbacks, which I did just because I want to see what they pointed out, we get reminded about Archbug and how he said, I'll be back when you have someone that you care about. And so that's what Ian's thinking about, is he's like, it's probably better if you don't love me, it'd be dangerous. Even though she's more thinking about, like, you're not a Quaker, that could be a problem for us. But that's not what gets brought up at that time. Then we have a nice little moment, or maybe not, we'll see, where Claire is, you know, doing her doctor thing, and a man comes up asking to trade some medicines for her. He's looking for a specific medicine or herb, and he's like, I have some to trade. I always bring some over. And so they're going back and forth about medicines, have this nice little back and forth. And then when he goes to walk away, she's like, oh, I didn't catch your name. I'm sorry. And he says, it's Major General Benedict Arnold. And then he walks away. And Claire is just kind of like, oh shit. Which I love. I love when we meet people. Then we go back to Rachel and Denny, who are now sitting on a log, and they're going to chat about Ian Murray. She asked Denny if he would pray for her, and Denny's like, of course I will. And she's like, do you have faith in me? And he's like, I have faith in God. I don't know about faith in you. And he's like, would you be asking me to pray if you weren't in love with him? And Denny just cautions her. He says, I've been put out of the meeting, but you haven't. Because that's the thing. He was put out of his meeting. He was forced out, but she wasn't. So she can technically go to any group of Quakers that they would come across, and she can join back in. She is only, she has self-exiled herself to be with her brother so that he isn't alone. And if she were to marry Ian Murray, that would be over for good. Like if she married someone who wasn't a Quaker, it'd be done. There's no chance for it to happen at all. So anyway, that's something to contemplate for Rachel, is where she's feeling about that. Then we go back to Claire and Jamie, and she's explaining kind of who Benedict Arnold is and the fact that him turning coat is an important part of the war, because even though it will cause some loss of morale, it also makes, it gets some people even more determined about it. And we'll see more about him later on, because right now everything's good for Benedict Arnold, but things are going to change very soon. But yeah. All right, then we have a nighttime gathering of a lot of Daniel Morgan's men, and he's sharing that Sugarloaf has been retaken for the Americans. We did not get back Ticonderoga, but they did capture men, and they freed Americans from captivity. And then he shares some scars on his back that look mighty familiar. And he says that the British did that to him. They gave him 499 lashes because he had like a disagreement with an officer, and he had gotten hit and he hit back, and things had spiraled out of control. And so he doesn't know that Jamie has these scars. Jamie hasn't shared them with him, but Jamie says, I think he knows that there's something similar about us and like what kind of drives us for it. So it's very interesting. All right, now we have reached the morning of the final battle of Saratoga. So it is October 7th, 1777, and we begin with the drums of war. And then we dive right into this battle. We have kind of in the woods and like hidden behind a barrier, we have Jamie with Daniel Morgan's men. We also have Benedict Arnold on his horse leading some of the battle. And they're going up against Simon Fraser's company. So Jamie and the men are ordered to take out Simon Fraser, and there's some back and forth. In this day in history, Simon Fraser does die. So that is what happens. He ends up getting hit. In the episode also, Jamie shoots the hat off of William. And so that's a bit nerve-wracking. Anyway, but then someone else shoots Simon, and finally they follow the retreat into the fort. They chase them back in. They get over the walls. They attack, and they're able to overtake everything. And so I made a note of this while I was watching it, that this battle is like lost on October 7th, but the official like full surrender won't happen until October 17th. So like they've won, but now they got to do the politics part of it and decide what the terms of surrender for General Burgoyne are going to be, and all of that jazz. So, but this is going to be the turning point in the war, that when the French see that the Americans were able to make a move like this, to take down a force like this, that they want to become a part of it. So we don't share that in the show much, but again, a point of history that I wanted to mention, because I have been looking up the battle dates, because they had some of the dates weird in a previous episode. Like, it's all in the same month, but they, like, picked the wrong dates for some stuff, and I didn't understand why they did that, but all of the, like, dates mentioned in this episode are correct. All right, so then we see Arnold in Claire's tent for a healer. He'd been shot in the same leg again. Claire's working on his leg, and he's so sad about it. He says, I wish it had been in the heart instead of the leg. He'd already went through so much pain with his leg. He won't even take any laudanum because he's like, I worked so hard to not be addicted to it back then, because when he got hurt before, he was on it for quite a bit. And he also is talking, you know, he's saying that if I had died, I would be a martyr. I would be talked about. And instead, I'm like being shamed for what I did. He was a hero in this battle. But like General Gates doesn't see him that way. And General Gates is like taking all the credit for it. And Claire has like a guilty moment with this, because when he's saying, should I be angry about it? You know, she knows he needs to be angry, and that history still needs to play out how it does, where he is going to turn coat. So instead of trying to diffuse some of his anger and maybe like, you know, do what Claire does, she just has to let him be angry about it. And that's really hard for her to do. Then we have a white flag brought in and asking Jamie if he would come and see General Fraser. He is asking to see a kinsman before he dies. And so Jamie and Claire have safe passage into the British camp to do this. So Jamie and Simon get to have a last moment together. And while Jamie is in the tent with him, Claire goes out and she sees William. And William is now a much different man than he was at the beginning of this season. And, you know, Claire shares with him, like, war is a terrible business. No matter who wins, the losses are real. And we've seen that. Willie has seen, you know, really awful things up to this point. He's lost a friend in battle. He's seen how bloody it is. And he's just so sad about it. And one of the things I'll mention that is from the book that doesn't get mentioned here is, because we don't get really Willie's point of view enough to know this, is that all he wants to do now is see his dad, his John Gray. He really wants to see his father when he was so eager to go to war before. And it's a really bittersweet moment. It's bittersweet moment. And then we have Jamie come out, and he overhears, you know, Willie's talking with one of his commanding officers, and he's like, some dude shot off my hat. And Jamie walks up and gives him a hat, and he says, you know, I think I owe you a hat. And so it becomes clear that Jamie's the one who shot it off. And so Jamie and Claire are walking away, and she's like, what are you doing? And he's like, Jamie says, like, I've almost shot William twice. Once on the day he was born, if you remember, he had to shoot the crazy man who was going to shoot the baby, and he could have shot him. And once just now. And he wanted to speak to him once as a man in case it was his only chance. So that is a very hard moment. Then we see William getting promoted and have a little back and forth again between him and a general. And he says that's a very impressive gentleman is James Fraser. So very nice moment. So now we have General Gates comes to speak with Jamie, and he shares that the terms of surrender are almost all signed. There's just one thing we're waiting on. The British had asked that Simon Fraser be brought back to Scotland to be buried. That was one of his wishes. That's something in his will that he wanted if it was possible. And because they know that Jamie is his cousin or kin to him, they ask if he would accompany his body to Scotland, which, wouldn't you know, just works out so perfectly for what Jamie and Claire have been trying to do for a year. So a year delayed, but now they're going to get to go to Scotland, and not only go, they're going to be on one of His Majesty's ships being ferried to Scotland safely, which is amazing. So they are leaving the war and they are headed back to Scotland. So yeah, that's going to happen. Then we have Ian telling Rachel that he's going to be going, and he must go to honor his promise to his mother that he would come see her again. And he asked her to watch Rollo for him, and she says she will, not only because she loves Rollo, which we love a girl who loves a dog, We love it. But because it means that he'll return to her. And she says, we're headed to Valley Forge. Then we have our 1980 scene, and it's the last one. And this is time for Roger and Buck to go back to get Jem. And it has them saying goodbye, saying they're going to go find him. And then Buck and Roger put their arms around each other and touch the stone. And now they're gone. And we're going to talk more about this in the book portion of it. But that's just where it ends. We don't see any more of Bree or Roger or Buck for this half season. It's done now. Then we go back to 1777 to end this off here. We have first we have Rachel running in to Archbug while she's walking down the road, and he recognizes Rollo. And of course, Rollo had spent a lot of time around Archbug for many years when they lived on the farm, and he's like, wow, a man must love you quite a bit to leave you with his dog. And she doesn't really say anything. She doesn't really deny it, because why would she to this stranger? She doesn't have to really lie to him. And he's like, you have a good day. So that's a bit sinister that Bug has found her. He's definitely been watching all this time, which is a bit disturbing. Now we're on a boat. I literally wrote that in my notes. We are on a boat. And so we have a cute little moment of, Jamie being seasick and Claire saying, let me use the needles for you. If you remember, we used acupuncture back in season 3 to help with some of his seasickness. And he's like, I'm sick of looking like a porcupine. She's like, would you rather look ridiculous like a porcupine or be throwing up into the Irish Sea every 5 minutes? And he's like, ugh. Ian comes down and he's like, I miss my dog, which is just the most not only relatable moment, but adorable. Okay, we love Ian Murray. We love him. And then we hear the bells and we hear land ho. And we go upstairs, we go up to the deck and we see land, and it is Scotland. And guys, my heart was bursting with joy for this. Just a few of the implications here. If you don't know the timeline of this, it has been over 10 years since Jamie has ever been back to Scotland. Not since, book 3, season 3 in 1766, 67 is the last time that he was there. And he's finally coming home, bringing Ian back to his sister, going to see his family, which is a beautiful thing. It's a really beautiful thing. I'm very excited for that to happen. And then also just a final note. There was a lovely, this episode was in memory of, I'm not going to say her name right, I'm sorry, but Sinead O'Connor. I'm so sorry if I mispronounce it, but she has died recently, which was very sad. So yeah, that is where we ended the mid-season of season 7. And before I do my rating here, one of the things, well, no, we'll do the ratings now. Okay, we'll do the ratings now, because then if nobody wants to hear anything about future, you can leave off of this one here. So my rating for this one is, I would give it an 8 out of 10. I very much enjoyed it. I was so compelled. This episode really flew by for me. There was a few key moments I'd been excited for. I really loved seeing the progress of Rachel and Ian's relationship. I've shared that is one of my favorite relationships in the book. It is right behind Jamie and Claire and Roger and Bree. I love Ian and Rachel, particularly in the books. And I've been a little nervous about the person they had playing Rachel. She isn't quite how I pictured her to be, but that's okay. People win me over all the time. There's no doubt that happens for sure. But again, with Ian, they definitely have really more put in the aging him up more, especially since he's been back from the Mohawk in this time. But it also, it's one thing to feel like he has grown and another to feel like he's a romantic interest at all. But I was feeling it. Okay, the scene with the two of them, I was feeling some flutters. So yeah, an 8 out of 10 for that for me. Book accuracy wise, again, I would stick with about an 8 out of 10 for this. For the stuff we saw in this one anyway, an 8.5 out of 10 for book accuracy, which we'll get to. So that is my ratings for this. Before, no, let's get into it. We'll get into it. All right. So we're going to go into the chapter comparisons of this. And then maybe I'll get into some of my guesses for the future again and possible like spoiler talk here, which honestly is not too much different from what I had 2 weeks ago, because again, besides the episode not quite ending how I thought it would, well, half did. Anyway, whatever. Okay, so I'll touch on Bree and Roger first. So as I have shared in some previous weeks, they really brought a lot of the Bree and Roger stuff like forward with this. They played out their storyline a bit heavier in this first half, and we've pretty much have went through all of the Bree and Roger stuff, right? So just to show, this is where we're ending with Jamie and Claire. This is how much of their story is left. This is where is it? Chapter 90 is where we ended off with, here we go. This is where we ended off with Bree and Roger. So the Bree and Roger stuff went forward a bit more. A lot of the stuff that we saw in episode like 6 and 7 happens after in the story, but because they're in different timeline, like it doesn't bother me. But really the only chapter that has the stuff from Bree and Roger was chapter 90. And then the start of this episode for Jamie and Claire was chapter 62, which was One Just Man, which is the battle aftermath. It has like all the stuff we were seeing happen for Claire and Jamie. It has her, you know, yelling at him saying, your hand looks like fucking hamburger meat. Why do you always have to be such a stubborn Scot who like jumps into everything? But he explains that like we need to like break the charge or anything. And so it plays out pretty much exactly the same. She tells him like, I'm going to work on your hand afterward. There's some other people who need help immediately, but I'm going to fix your hand because I want you to be left with a working hand. And so when she's doing some other stuff, she actually does, in the book, we see the scene where she runs into the young man who says like, that big Scot, he broke the charge. He saved our lives because he gave us a chance to kind of reset. And he said that man has balls the size of a 10-pound shot, which, I mean, if that doesn't describe Jamie, I don't know. So then we do have, again, the scene where they're talking about and she wants to fix his hand. And Jamie actually says, just amputate the finger. It's given me nothing but trouble for all these years. Just cut it off. And she's hesitant to do that. But he's like, just get rid of it. Because if you don't, then I'll just have a useless finger instead of if you cut it off, I could have the other fingers work. And so she does plan to do that. And then we have the scene where he says, you know, if there was, how many men were like in that company? And, you know, he says, tell them I did not grudge them the finger. So again, saying that the cost of his finger, which in the book is stronger because he actually is she does take his finger. He says, you know, my finger was worth the lives of these men, is basically what he says, which is really beautiful and definitely Jamie. Now, the show doesn't take his finger, but I think that's easily answered. You know, why have Sam have to do something to keep his finger hidden when they can just give him another scar, just have his hand stay stiff? The point is that his hand was very injured and it needs to heal. And you can do that whether we, you know, chop his finger and have to have him then like wear, you know, a prosthetic hiding his finger for it. We don't need to do that. So it works. Anyway, like I don't have a problem with us doing that. Then chapter 64 is the one that is a gentleman caller. And, you know, we meet Major General Benedict Arnold. And then there is a passage talking about John Andre and the spy ring and everything and how there's some of the people who will like turn him to the other side. So we get some of the history in there. Then chapter 65 is the hat trick, and that's the end of the battle and all of that. Then there is chapter 66, which is the deathbed. So saying goodbye to Simon Fraser, but a few things that pop up. So this is where we have a bit of a change. We have, the doctor who is leaving Simon Fraser's, room. His name is Dr. Rawlings. And so Claire is like, oh my gosh, I know that name. And she says, did you know a Daniel Rawlings? And she can't really say like what she knew of him, but she's like, did you, run into him? And he says, that's my brother. Did you know him? What? And she's like, wow, that truck is nice and loud anyway. She's like, or his brother asks, have you seen him? Like, what was he up to? And she's like, well, I'm sad to say he died. And she's like, it's a long story. I can tell you what I know, but I can't tell you right now because they're in the middle of, Simon Fraser's just died and everything. But it is in another scene just a little later on where she like has a sit down with him and kind of explains what she knows. So that's just kind of a cool like callback. And I love when Diana does that throughout her series. If there's people you meet, you'll probably run into them again at some. Okay, then the same stuff happens with William. William is made captain, all that. Then chapter 67 is Greasier Than Grease, and that's the stuff with Ian and Rachel and Denny. Then our other kind of change that we have, and I understand why they made it, because it was a really weird pop-in. This is the thing, again, she has callbacks that are cool, and then there's some that like, why did we do that? So there's a chapter 68, which let me pull this one up here. Chapter 68 is called Despoiler, and they're sitting at the fire talking, and there's this dude that comes around who we just call him Mr. X, and he starts telling a story that he was there the day before the slaughter at Culloden. And so he tends to he is bringing up the fact that he knows that Jamie killed his uncle before the Battle of Culloden, and he's going to try to blackmail them with it because, it's like, who would care at this point? It's been so long. But the thing is, Jamie has some standing as a Scot in the area, and there are plenty of people around who respected Dougal and know him still, right? Like, it's not like all those people are dead. And so this man is trying to blackmail Jamie into giving him money so that, he's trying to blackmail him. We know what blackmail is. And then, though, the man goes too far and he, like, threatens Claire and is, like, saying shit about her. And so Jamie and Ian, like, jump the guy, and Ian actually kills the man. And, like, some people see it happen, so Ian has to make a run for it. And Rollo had actually got shot in this. And so he's going to kill Rollo because he's like, they're going to kill him and torture him anyway. So he's going to put his dog out of misery. And Rachel is like, no, I'll take care of Rollo. You get out of here. So Ian has to run into the woods. So this happens. And it's just kind of like, what the shit is going on? So then we have, so that happens. He runs off into the woods. Then we have chapter 69, which is called Terms of Surrender. And we have the same scene that we talked about where, Gates comes, tells him to take his body to Scotland. They're going to send him there. He can take his people and go. So we have this scene. We know that it's going to happen. And then we have to like skip ahead. So this is what happens. Now we skip ahead to them write. There's a letter that Brianna has written, or there's a letter that Claire writes to Brianna. And this is a letter that we see like earlier in the show, but they don't tell us the whole contents of this letter. But this is the letter that she gets right before Buck Mackenzie meets them. So you can see how they like moved a few things around, but the stuff still happens in the same order. So we find out from this letter that they're just about to take off to Scotland. This was right before they leave. She posts this letter, which again, it's funny that she like posts the letters, but like they're gonna keep all the letters to get them to them. So it's weird in the letter. She's like, I have to write this before we leave, when I'm like, you can literally take it with you. But anyway, so in this letter, she explains that, the stuff about the battle and that they're going back to Scotland. And she says, I won't explain it in full detail right now, but Ian, he killed a man. This man deserved to die, blah, blah, blah. But he's now like fully undercover as like an Indian who's going with them. And so he's just speaking in Gaelic the whole time on the boat so that the like British like captain doesn't realize that he's American because they don't understand Gaelic from Mohawk. Like they don't know the difference. So that's how Ian is escaping the country with them is he's going as one of their servants, because they're allowed to bring their servants and their household with them on the ship. So Ian is supposed to be their like Indian servant who's going with them, and that's how he escapes the country. But it is just kind of a random thing that's thrown in to like make Ian a fugitive when, I don't know, I feel like he didn't need to be. So I'm also kind of like, why did the book have this happening? It's so weird. But anyway, that's really the only difference. Now in the book, we don't have the dramatic moment of them landing at Scotland, which when you think about it, it really should have been a bigger moment. I believe in the book we have that moment, like when he gets to Lallybroch, of it being like, I'm home, you know, because there was even a time where like, you know, they never thought they would be there again, right? So, that is where like the book ends. Like I said, we don't even see the whole journey. We see this letter that Brianna's reading, and then we skip ahead, which I won't like tell us what happens here, but we skip all the way ahead to December of 1777, and they're in Edinburgh. So, you know, the show adds that scene of them seeing land. I think it's absolutely beautiful. I think it's an addition to something that should have been in the book, of them seeing Scotland for the first time in over a decade. But it definitely works more cinematically than it does in the book anyway. It's more going to be important to Jamie when he sees his family than when he sees the land, you know. But yeah, so where we've left off in the book is, as I've said, we've basically caught up to the Bree and Roger stuff that's in here. There's only one little part that isn't left off. So now I'm going to talk about some spoilers. By the way, for sure, I'm getting into spoilers right now if you don't want to know stuff about the future. If not, like, we'll see you next year when we make more of these, right? So we are now, something I'd alluded to in a previous one of these, is that we are going to be entering a period of time where we are going to see Lallybroch in 3 different time periods in the same season, which is so cool, because we have Bree and Mandy, who are still in Lallybroch in 1980. We have Jamie and Claire, who are going to be in Lallybroch in 1770s. And we have Roger and Buck, who are going to be at Lallybroch at an undetermined time. I won't tell you what time they're going to be there, because it's kind of a spoiler. Which again, I mean, I guess I'm in the spoilers, but it is not going to be either of the 2 times that our other people are. But it will be a time where there's some characters that we know. So this was something that I've been floating around. We will, with Buck and Roger, what we see in the 8th book, which again, we've all caught up to the Roger and Bree stuff in here. The only thing we missed is after Roger and Buck have went through the stones, Bree gets home, and we realize that Jem and Rob never went through the stones. Rob planted Jemmy's scarf there to make them think that they did. He has actually stayed so that he can get the men out of the way and now have Bree at his mercy and force her to tell him where the gold is, because he does realize that the gold should still be there now. That was the whole point of Jamie writing the letters to them, is that it would still be there now. Why would they have to go back in time to get it? So Rob isn't a stupid man. We'll just say that. But he has left us in a pretty dangerous place. So again, where I thought that this was going to end, I thought it was going to be a cliffhanger, and that Bree was going to be going back home with Mandy and kind of be crying. And then like Rob was like going to turn on a light and be holding a gun at her and like going to order her to, like, that's where I thought it was going to end, which would have been like a horrible cliffhanger, right? Because you're just like, oh my God, what just happened? But again, I think this was a much more like peaceful kind of place to pause, right? But that is where I thought it was going to end. That's what I was guessing. But where Roger and Buck end up now, right? Because Jemmy and Rob didn't go anywhere. So where are they going? Because they were going to focus on Jem and try to end up wherever they went, right? They had no idea where they were going. They were going to need to just focus on where Jem was. Well, things are going to go awry, and they're actually going to end up in Scotland in just a few years before Claire will ever go. So Roger and Buck are actually going to meet Brian Fraser, Jenny Fraser, and Blackjack Randall, who is still the commander of the fort. And Jamie happens to be gone with Ian to France while they're doing their young man gallivanting all over the place. And we're going to get to meet Brian Fraser, and not only him, but quite a few other characters who are alive at that time. So all these people that Roger has heard about, people who are Buck's relatives directly, you know, like his mother, Galis, and his father, Dougal, and all of these people. So, oh my God, it's just going to be so amazing. So what I'm really hoping for, and I've shared this, I was talking with my friends about this, is that season 8 or season 7 part 2 has the possibility for some of the best callback cameos that we've had forever, right? I'm so hoping for that. I don't know if we're getting all of those, because here's the thing, if that's happening in season 7.2 and the second half and they're already are filming that stuff, they've been keeping it really quiet, you know, they haven't shared it. And here's the other thing too. One of the reasons I think it's so smart that they recast William Buckley, I know we kind of were having an issue with that, is that Graham McTavish could literally play Dougal again, because we can see Dougal again. So that is kind of the question too, is you know, besides them, you know, wanting to have someone else do it, oh, it's so cool. Okay, there's so many cool things that can happen in this. I don't know if we'll get it all, but what a wonderful thing to be able to do, to have Tobias Menzies come back, Graham McTavish come back, have Brian Fraser be there, have Galis Duncan be there. There are so many possibilities. If they're going to stay book accurate, which they have so far, it's going to be amazing. And then we're going to have Bree and her kids trying to fight for survival against what Rob is trying to do to them. And then we have her husband stranded in a different time. And we have, you know, just there's chaos with that story. And I got to tell you, the first time I read these books, that storyline just cracked my brain. When I did a reread later on, I really was writing out everything that was happening. And I don't know how Diana kept it all straight, because it's just nuts. We have people in all these different times and everything, which is really cool at the same time. Then, you know, we're also going to have Jamie and Claire maybe confronting some people from our past as well, like a certain Leary Mackenzie. One of the things that I am sad we missed out this season is on seeing, you know, Fergus and Marcelly. We don't have any scenes of them. I hope they're in, you know, when we get back to America, that we would see them, because there is a cool storyline that the baby boy, the oldest boy, who I just forgot his name, the oldest little boy, he has a really cool storyline. So I don't know. We also didn't get really any Lord John Grey. I shared about that. I really want us to have an episode about what's been happening with him, because he becomes very important in the second half of the book here. Lord John Grey becomes very important. So there's a lot of stuff working for it, and I'm so excited with what they're going to do. So my brain has just kind of spun out everywhere. It's time to wrap this up. But basically my thoughts on this first half overall, it is the most book accurate season we've had since season fucking 2. Okay, it is so well accurate. Even season 2 had its changes, but to me, that's the last time we were this close to some stuff. There have been parts of it throughout the seasons that have been close, but to me, this is the closest they've ever been. And I'm actually shocked at how much they were able to fit into it, right? Obviously they've taken out a lot of small stuff in there, but I think even if you are a book reader who, I enjoy all of this stuff. I understand that it doesn't all look good on the screen. It's not all stuff that needs to be. A lot of it is Claire thinking about things. A lot of it is surgeries and little intricacies and stuff that like I'm a nerd for it, but I don't need to see it on the screen. And so I feel like they've done such a great job synthesizing it down without losing the important stuff. And the Bree and Roger storyline is an A+ for me. They did it so well. They have almost every scene with them that's in here is in this. It's fantastic. I'm so impressed. So also, like I said, because they took out a lot of the Lauren John Gray like all of the Lauren John Gray chapters and a lot of the William chapters, they were able to condense it down a lot more. So yes, that is something that we sacrificed for it. But overall, man, I'm so impressed. So yeah, as a season, I give this a 9 out of 10. It's fantastic. I'm very impressed and I love it so much. So thank you so much for watching this. Thank you for being here, for making it to the end of this little track of it. I will, of course, be back next time. I haven't made any other Outlander content besides these reviews just because for my main channel, you know, my main stuff, like these don't do that well. And I enjoy making these, I really do. But it's why I don't really do trailer reactions. I don't really do a lot of the other stuff. But if one of you has a really good idea for a Outlander episode or Outlander video, please put it down below because I would consider it. I have to have the inspiration strike and me want to make it enough that I won't care what the views are because this is my business. I need videos to do well. And if I make an Outlander video that no one cares to watch, it does hurt my business. It doesn't mean that it won't make my heart happy, but it can hurt my business. But if you have a great idea for an Outlander video you'd like to see in the interim, let me know, because I would consider it. I'm not completely against it if I get a great idea. But thank you so much for watching this. If you'd like to check out some of my other content, I do romance reviews. I recommend different books, so check that out. Thank you so much for watching, my friends, and we'll see you next time. Bye.